I so highly encourage it because I'm not the type who thought it would be really fun to learn about myself and take some tests. I mean, that's what? But man, they changed my life. I mean, they've changed so much for me personally, understanding myself and having confidence in who I am and how I'm made and where I don't have a strength. It helps me kind of understand why. Why is that hard for me? Well, because that's not one of my strong abilities, And professionally, it's given me great confidence to keep moving forward in what I'm doing. And so I just can't recommend it enough.
This is Andrew Petty is Dying, where we tap into the power of our mortality to become the people we were made to be and live the lives we were made to live. I'm your host, Andrew Petty, and I'm dying. I hate to say it, but so are you. Hey everybody, it's great to be back with you after a 6-week break from the show. What better way to kick things off than for my wise and wonderful wife, Charis, to join me again for this second installment in a 2-part series about how assessments can transform your life, work, and relationships. I know, sounds crazy. Assessment sounds dry and dull and boring, but I hope if you listen to the first episode, I'm beginning to persuade you otherwise. In the previous episode, through the lens of our own stories, Charis and I explored the transformational potential available to us through the Myers-Briggs Type Inventory, an assessment that helps us understand our natural personality style better. In this episode, again through the lens of our own stories, we're going to explore the transformational potential available to us through the Highlands Ability Battery, an instrument that helps us understand the abilities we were born with. The Highlands Ability Battery is particularly useful for understanding the kind of work we were made to do in the world. Taken together, Myers-Briggs and the Highlands Ability Battery provide invaluable insight into the kind of human we are, our nature. In turn, that insight can equip us to become the person we were made to be and live the life we were made to live. If you find yourself stuck in any area of life, if you find that what got you here isn't getting you where you want to go, if you have persistent points of irritation or conflict at work or at home, if you have a big dream to tackle but just can't seem to get moving, if you simply want to be all that you can be, then this episode is for you. You don't have to listen to the previous episode in order for this one to make sense. Both episodes can stand alone, but I do encourage you to tune into both for the full benefit. As I said in the previous episode, much of who we are and why we do what we do as humans in this world remains a mystery. But some things don't need to remain a mystery. We hope our story inspires you to pursue fresh insight into the kind of human you are and start taking action on it today. Well, it is an absolutely stunning day here in Steamboat, and my wife, Charis, and I are sitting in my office here on Yampa Street by the Yampa River and looking out at a beautiful day. It's a Friday, and we're both working really hard to get in a frame of mind where we can offer you some useful conversation on a topic that's really exciting and important to us. But it's Friday afternoon and it's beautiful out, and we're just kind of having fun hanging out here and chatting. So we're trying to turn the corner into this conversation, and we're going to pull it off because we are grown-ups and we know how to conduct ourselves in a civil manner when we need to, right?
At least our boys think so.
At least our boys think so. That's right. So here we are for part 2 of this conversation about assessments. Thanks for doing this again with me, wifey.
My pleasure.
Again, like I said in the first episode, the previous episode where we focused on Myers-Briggs, it may be strange to think of assessments as something that can be fun and exciting and energizing and empowering, but that is precisely what we have found to be the case in our own lives and in my clients' lives who I get to work with and use these resources and tools. And maybe some of you listening have found the same to be true. What I have found, however, is that very often, even if you've used an assessment, it stops often at insight. You get the report, it's got some results. Oh, that's neat. Yeah, that makes sense. I hadn't seen that before. And fail to move on to action. And that's a really big gap that needs to be closed. And it's the important gap that needs to be closed between insight and action. As I mentioned in the last episode, insight plus action equals transformation. If you've listened to this podcast for more than just a few episodes, you've heard me say that before. Insight alone doesn't cut it. You've got to have action with it in order to experience transformation. And so one of the things that Charis and I have done is worked really hard to take the concepts from the page and into our real lives. And that does take quite a bit of work, but it only takes doing the first thing, taking the first action based upon some insight, and then taking another action based upon that insight, and getting some reps in. Before you know it, you're getting somewhere very different than where you were before, and much better in a lot of ways. So we're going to unpack today our experience with the Highlands Ability Battery, which is the second of the two assessments we're going to touch on, and the two that I used most frequently and really effectively with my clients. A little bit about Highlands Ability Battery, just by way of introduction. So Myers-Briggs is a subjective instrument, and it helps you understand the personality style that you were born with and that you will essentially go to the grave with. It doesn't change fundamentally over the course of your lifetime. Your personality style doesn't. Your expression of your personality style may evolve over time. Highlands Ability Battery, on the other hand, or as is affectionately known and kind of dorkily known among me and my colleagues sometimes, is the Highland Assault and Battery, because of how long it takes to take the assessment and how mushy your brain feels afterwards, is an objective instrument, meaning it has been designed to pretty effectively rule out your ability to manipulate the results in any way. And I have found in my own life that the results correspond very highly with reality and my experience, and help me make greater sense of my experience and make even more solid decisions moving forward about how I spend my time and energy. And Highlands Ability Battery helps you understand the abilities that you were born with and that you can neither lose nor improve upon, and they're distinguished from skills that you've acquired along the way. And there's a range of results from low to high ability. And a low score means one thing and a high score means another. And it's not a value-laden instrument similar to Myers-Briggs in that a high score is a good thing and a low score is a bad thing. A low ability in some area like idea productivity, for example, is one of the categories on this assessment, could be a good thing for a neurosurgeon. Because if you have high idea productivity, it means that your brain is constantly throwing new ideas at you and can lead to distraction. And if you're on the table under the knife of a neurosurgeon, the last thing you want is for that neurosurgeon to be easily distracted by a bunch of ideas. And so, in fact, a low result in idea productivity could be an asset for a neurosurgeon. That's just an example of how the results in this assessment take some time to work with to figure out. They're neutral in essence. And so the thing that ultimately matters is, what do I do with what I've learned about the kind of human that I am based upon the results that I get from this assessment? Some of the areas that Highlands Ability Battery measures are your natural ability in learning, problem solving, logical reasoning, spatial awareness, language acquisition, musical ability, and generating new ideas. Those are my language, not the language of the assessment. Those are sort of broad categories, some of the main categories that Highlands measures you in when you take it. I don't think I need to tell you much more about the assessment itself, because the point of this conversation is just begin to unpack Charis's and my stories in order to help you see the impact that this instrument can have in your life in both the personal and professional realms. Can you think of anything else, honey, that might be useful to know about this instrument itself, or anything that I've just kind of missed in terms of setting the stage?
I don't think so.
So I did it perfectly?
Exactly.
So let's turn the corner then into talking about our own experiences. And Charis, I want you to lead off. We've both been using the results from this assessment for a number of years, and I think you've had the most significant experience with it most recently. So tell the listeners how you began to experience it and what difference it began to make for you.
So I think it was 4 years ago, maybe. I had been working with my mom in real estate just as an admin assistant, and decided it'd be beneficial for me to get my license, which meant school, studying, testing, and all of those are 4-letter words to me and terrify me, because in my growing up years in the traditional school system, I generally did not feel smart. In many ways, I probably felt somewhat dumb. Not completely. I wasn't failing classes, but it was just hard for me to learn what I now realize, hard for me to learn in that traditional environment. And so studying, taking tests definitely created a lot of anxiety in me. And I kind of immediately approached it as, well, I hope I pass. If I can just get a passing grade, that, but I don't even know if I'll be able to do that. So I kind of came in with a negative energy, because that's just how I always approached schooling because of my past experiences.
For your real estate exam?
Yeah. So you suggested doing the Highlands Ability Battery to understand myself better and I don't know. We just sort of wanted to try it to see how maybe that would help me get through that process.
And I don't remember exactly what I was thinking back then, but of course I knew that the Highlands Ability Battery could help you understand how your brain worked.
Right.
How you learned.
Right. That's
how
right.
you processed information, how you problem solved, and might then give you some insights into how you could prepare for the exam process and all the studying that would need to happen. I didn't know what all of the benefits might be, but I think that was probably some of the thinking.
So went through the process of taking it, which it is a very long process. Because I'd done the Myers-Briggs, I'd already kind of learned to change my approach to it, that it wasn't a test in the sense of value and you come out with a grade, but it was just something I just needed to relax and do. And so I did, got through it all. And then did the interpretation with Leslie.
And Leslie, shout out to Leslie. Leslie and Matt are two key people in our story, especially over the past decade. Leslie introduced me to the Highlands Ability Battery and helped me get proficient in administering it, and I still partner with her in that today. They were instrumental in helping Charis and I make the decision to move out to Colorado and open a new chapter in our lives. And so we phoned a friend. We realized it probably wasn't the best for me to interpret the results for Charis as her husband.
Right.
I was biased, and it's like teaching your kids to ski, as we've discovered. That doesn't work very well. But
I'm not sure if I would have believed some of what you told me, because you're always so kind and loving and think so well of me.
I am not.
But I needed to hear it from a third party.
Yeah. So we phoned a friend, and Leslie took Charis through the interpretation process. So keep going.
For me, it was, I would probably say, mind-blowing. I mean, she came at me telling me all these areas that I had such great strength in, and even used the term power clusters.
Mm-hmm. Which you haven't let me forget, that you have a bunch of power clusters.
But I think one of the coolest things for me to see is a lot of where I had great strengths were areas that would not have necessarily been discovered in a traditional school setting, because I'm not the typical book smart like you are. So I generally compared myself to people like you who can take in information, retain it, regurgitate it, all through reading or listening to a lecture or something, and come to understand that I am so much more hands-on. And
well, I want to say a little more about that, because just tease out some of the specifics there. So you hadn't experienced yourself as, quote, smart in the standard school environment, because the standard school environment basically, I mean, it's maybe a slight oversimplification, but it's generally the case. They're throwing a bunch of information at you, and you're supposed to retain it long enough to be able to spit it back out on some sort of test, whether it's a written test or a practical, it doesn't matter. You're supposed to hold on to that long enough. That's something that my brain's really good at, and my natural ability battery shows that. In the specialized abilities portion of the assessment, it has 5 what are called learning channels: verbal memory, tonal memory, design memory, rhythm memory, and one more I'm forgetting off the top. And I'm high in I'm high in at least 4 or 5 of those, really high in those. And so in a standard learning environment, they would throw information at me. My brain would just suck it up, especially if I was interested in it. And then come test time, I could give it all back to you.
No matter how you learned it, whether it was through reading a textbook,
because I had so many different
lecture,
learning channels that were useful to me. And so it worked really well in that environment. And I got labeled classically smart. I mean, smart in the way that we've come to and I was in the gifted track. And you had a very different experience. And then you get these assessment results back, and Leslie's going, man, you've got these power clusters and you can do X, Y, and Z. And some of the areas where Charis really shone, some of them, because there were many of them, were just in her raw processing power, as demonstrated by the classification score, which is your ability to take seemingly unrelated bits of information and draw a conclusion quickly. So she's an extremely gifted problem solver. She solves problems quickly. She can solve complex problems. She can also organize thoughts in a logical order really quickly. So she's just got this just really profound problem-solving raw capacity that in the standard school environment never really has a chance to shine. Well, you go from there. Those are some of the specifics that I wanted to tease out in terms of the differences between our perceptions of ourselves as kids versus adults. And by the way, it's really interesting, because as an adult in the real world, where solving problems on a regular basis is required of you, I've felt much less comfortable in that realm. And that's really where you shine. We talk about it often as like situational awareness or street smarts or common sense, and And that's where you really shine and I really don't. And that's part of the enjoyment I get from our partnership is that I bring some of the, the academic side to things, and you bring just like this amazing brain and ability to perceive and make sense of real world situations and see through to the heart of things. And so we make a great team in that regard. So keep going.
So learning these things, being told, gosh, you've got all these incredible abilities, and the word smart wasn't used, but I felt like someone for the first time was like, you are so smart, but in a way that I understood what that meant, not just this big term of smart. It was like, this right here means that you're so good at X, Y, and Z, and you need to do more of this because this comes really natural to you and you can excel in it. And through that, it started to build a sense of confidence in me that was like, oh, okay, I've got some good stuff to offer. Then I've got some ability to excel in certain areas. Not that I was like some pathetic puddle that didn't think I could do anything. Like I've always worked hard to do well at whatever I'm given, but it changed a mental.
Well, I want to ask you, like, what was your emotional experience of that?
Ooh, one of my favorite questions.
I know you love talking about, and this is for those of you who remember our Myers-Briggs conversation. She's ESFJ, and to ask an SF person about their emotions is usually cause them to break out in hives. So she may be breaking out in hives right now, but go with me on this because I think there probably was an emotional component to it as you realized, oh, I'm perhaps different than I've always thought myself to be.
I don't remember exactly, other than feeling a little bit excited. And I think of relief of, oh, okay, I don't need to be that hard on myself because maybe that wasn't totally accurate. I don't know exactly what emotions I was feeling, but positive for sure.
It felt good.
It felt good. What does this mean? So in that process as well, Leslie, also through kind of discovering different ways of my learning.
Are you getting ready to talk about prep for the test?
Yeah.
Let's pause there because I just want to double down on and make clear the point here that one of the key initial benefits to Charis was an evolved and overhauled perception of herself. So an assessment done on a computer.
Which I didn't think I wanted to do.
Right. That, on the one hand can feel like drudgery and drove a new level of self-knowledge that overhauled Charis's perception of herself. Now, how many of you listening could benefit from some evolved self-perception? And I bet many of you could. Both Charis and I still could benefit in many ways from evolving and improving our self-perception so that it's more accurate and corresponds with reality and relieves us of old messages about ourselves that perhaps are completely unfounded and untrue, but have the weight of truth still in our lives and so limit us. So I want us all to hear that. So a dry assessment taken on a computer over 3 hours that leaves your brain feeling like mush, nonetheless turned around results for Charis that began to change how she felt about herself. All right, keep going.
So in learning about different learning styles, and I don't know even exactly what Leslie would be able to speak to that, but in that she suggested some different ways to approach my studying. Just as an example, very simple, the studying process for the real estate license was there was a video and reading, and they said, do all of this reading and then watch the video. And because of what the results of the testing said about me, she was able to say, hey, try watching the video and then do the reading. Because having visual and auditory combined for me kept my attention better and helped me pull that information in. Reading is like one of my lowest ones. So then when I started reading it, it was referring back to something that had already been talked about. And I had already started studying and had been doing it the opposite way. And when I changed it, I could not believe the difference that it made. And I thought, holy cow, like one small change like that probably changed my entire studying experience of that whole process, which then kind of made me think too, like, gosh, there's probably a lot of other ways in my life that if I stop and think, okay, how do I function in this situation and maybe adjust a few things, my whole experience of that can be very different. So I was able to get through all of that studying It still wasn't fun and it was hard, but got through it in a way healthier fashion than I think I would have without that knowledge to begin with.
A couple points there. One would be that deeper self-knowledge about the kind of human you are and the way that your brain functions allowed you to improve the results from your study process. It also enabled you to give yourself permission to do things differently. The way that was being prescribed was X to Y to Z, and Leslie comes in and suggests, oh, do Z to Y to X. And you took her up on that offer and discovered that it worked better for you. So there's a self-permission component built in here that can be lacking when we don't have much self-knowledge about the kind of human we are and how we're made to function, that locks us into these ways of doing things that don't work well with the kind of human that we are. But now if you ever have to prepare for something, you better believe you'll be looking for ways that align with your learning channels.
I do it in work all the time. I mean, real estate, you're always having to learn and research and figure stuff out. And I already know I've got to find different avenues sometimes to pull that information in a way that I know will actually work for me.
You got through the prep and testing phase, and I've got the pre-picture going into testing where you're kind of like, oh crap, here we go. Then coming out and you'd gotten your results right away and you'd passed.
Yeah.
Passed with a great result too. Not just sort of like squeaked by.
Right. Which blew my mind.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, I'd been in real estate for a few years, 4 years, I guess, as an assistant. So I, didn't have these big lofty goals of just being a full-fledged real estate broker. But part of what Highlands Ability Battery can do as well is even give you suggestions of types of vocations, careers that may line up well with your abilities. And so oddly enough, real estate fit mine really well. Plenty of other options too, but yeah, I remember Leslie being like, well, actually it changes a lot, but you have your systems in place, you're dealing with people, kind of listing all these things off that I kind of went, yeah, those are a lot of the things that I actually enjoy doing. It doesn't feel like work to me all of the time. And so in that moment, kind of realizing, all right, well, maybe this would be a vocation that would work for me long term. So here we are another 4 years later, and it has been a really great fit. And with a lot of the knowledge that I have from the abilities that I discovered about myself, I think has helped give me a lot of confidence in certain areas of my job. Then knowing some of the areas that are a lot trickier, also I can be like, oh, okay, well, that's because I'm pretty low on that one. So I'll lean on, my mom, who's my business partner, or I'll go to you and try to pull some more information in from someone that deals with it differently.
That's a really interesting point, that when you are aware of your strengths and your challenges from an ability standpoint, then you can be more quick to leverage other resources to complement where you're weaker.
Right.
We do that in our marriage. We've tried really hard to do that in our marriage, whether it's personality or abilities. You're great with detailed day-to-day stuff, like seeing the next step. I'm not. And so we've just sort of acknowledged as often as is possible, it's really good for you to handle those things because you don't break a sweat doing it. You're better at it. We get a better result. And I handle very often more the bigger picture things and the long-term kinds of things. And think of how many times in relationships this can be sticking points for couples because they're not clear on each other's strengths and abilities, and each can feel personally challenged. Like maybe there's, beliefs about what men's and women's roles should be in relationships. And so it's very difficult for them to allocate and align their shared resources to the various tasks in managing a household because they just lack awareness in that area. And awareness in these areas has allowed Charis and I to approach managing our household more in terms of well, what are you good at? And what am I good at? And what do you stink at? And what do you suck at?
That's what a true definition of a partnership is.
And it's much more enjoyable. I think it's really fun when each of us gets to spend most of our time in areas that we enjoy and are good at and leave the rest to the other person. That's not always the case. It's not a perfect,
we're both missing the cooking ability.
Yeah, so we just both do that.
We just get through it.
That's true. It's true. We both hate to cook, and it's like we know we have to eat, so that one we just do together.
Right.
Where were we? You were talking about how the real estate has turned out to be a really good fit.
Yeah, and just being able to look into the future and seeing, what do I want that vocation to look like, and what will I need to make sure it continues to be an enjoyable thing to me. anyway, so it gives me comfort in knowing too that I'm doing something that is a great fit for me. There's other options out there too if, I wanted to change, but I would kind of know what directions to check out if I did suddenly realize, I don't want to do this anymore, but let's see, I remember I have these abilities and strengths here, so I'm going to try a couple of these professions, and it doesn't leave the world quite so wide open because there's also some where I can realize I'm not going to be great at that, so let's just not even mess with it.
That's a great point because your abilities are transferable across many different professional and vocational options. It works really well in real estate, and you don't currently have any reason to think of doing anything else. But, if we were to look at your abilities and your personality, we could identify some of the core elements that should be in place in order for you to have an enjoyable and productive experience at work. And some of those for you would include like the opportunity to solve complex problems on a regular basis, a fairly high-paced environment, the opportunity to create and manage systems, the opportunity to work with high attention to detail, looking at personality, the opportunity to interact with a lot of people on a regular basis, the opportunity to have a variety of so you could take that set of personality traits and natural abilities and use them as a filter through which to view all kinds of other professional opportunities and evaluate the fit.
Yeah, and even if you look at my past, I started out in a nonprofit, and then I moved, and then I got a job at an attorney's office and, applied my skills in the way that I could, and then moved again and got into the financial world. But looking back, I was using pretty much all of the same skill sets, just learning how to apply them in different environments. So understanding that even more helps me go, oh, okay, that's why I could do it in all of these different fields, not because I had interest in finance or law or any of that. It was figuring out how to put my ability into the positions that need that. It also has helped craft my particular job or role in real estate in a way that not every typical real estate agent would have either. So my mom and I in our company work closely with my brother's development company, and I have kind of taken point on the new construction developments because I love all of the details and the follow-up and working very closely with the building team and the project managers. So I'm almost like a mini project manager on the buying or selling side of it alongside these other project managers and supers. And I was able to bring something to the table that I also know not every real estate agent would, because I have this additional set of skills in here of working in that environment with those types of people and with those kinds of details. And so, as my mom saw that, it was clear, like, okay, great. You take that. You're good at it. You love it. Just makes sense that that's, where you would take hold of that, rather than, not that we'd fight over it, but like, who does this and who does that? When you really listen and see, oh no, I'm gifted, that like, I've got this. I know actually that I'm good at this because my test even says so. So let me take this and relieve you of it. And you're great at this over here, so you take that and run with it. And that makes for a great partnership as well.
That's a good point, because these kinds of assessments can often simply affirm for you in a validated, proven way things that you've sort of known about yourself, but didn't for some reason have the confidence to assert as true about you. Like the fact that you're a gifted problem solver. You may have sort of suspected that or experienced that or realized, gosh, I enjoy, like, if my day kind of throws me a big complex puzzle to work on, I feel really engaged. And that's kind of what your days are. Is like you wake up, and as soon as you wake up, you've got the day is just one big puzzle for you to solve of all kinds of moving parts and trying to help people get together and do deals and stuff. And you probably knew that you enjoyed that, but then you saw it on paper. Went, yeah, I really enjoy that, and I'm really good at it.
I don't think I ever had the words to put to that.
And when you get the words put to it and you get it shown to you, no, this is the thing. It's not just something that you like. This is part of how you are. It gives you more permission to go and embrace that part of you and deploy that part of you and enjoy that part of you. And over the past as your husband, you've heard me say this time and again because it's just so true. I just have been astounded, not because I didn't think you weren't capable. It's not that at all. It was just like you were so comfortably settled in an admin assistant function. You loved doing that. You were great at it. You thought, I can be a high-performing admin assistant for years and be happy. And then as you began to see some of your abilities and began to apply them and just stuck with it, I mean, today you're part owner of a brand new real estate brokerage here in Steamboat. You're a business owner. And I'm not drawing a value distinction between admin assistant and business owner. It's just that I don't think you ever imagined yourself in the position of a business owner, and you're enjoying it. You're loving it. You're great at it. And you're on the Metro board here, and you're on the HOA, and you're involved in so many ways that I don't think you ever necessarily had envisioned for yourself. But you just kept following the breadcrumbs of your abilities and seeing where they went and just blowing through ceiling after ceiling that before had seemed, maybe you hadn't even seen those before or imagined that they were ceilings you would want to break through.
Well, I'm fortunate to be working with my mom, who been in the industry a long time, and I mean, she definitely helped create an environment too where I was allowed to grow and figure all that stuff out. And through the years, she and I figured out how to make a great team out of it, which without that, I don't think it would be as successful. I think the more we understand what each of us are good at and what we like doing, and you can go a long way when you got a strong partnership like that, you know. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun to figure it all out. And I think it's more fulfilling than just being, than just being an admin assistant. I mean, I was really good at that and like being an executive assistant, but now realizing, I like to do even more than that. I find it very fun and really energizing. And it has all of its challenges and stresses and all of that. But I love when the boys ask us about work and stuff. And I can honestly say, you know, when one of them one time said, I feel bad that you're working because it's summer break for them. They're not working, you know, but I said, oh, no, it's okay. I really like my work. I don't find it a burden at all that I'm working today because I like what I do. That's really fun to get to tell an 11-year-old that.
Which reminds me, we were talking this morning about when we find ourselves not liking our work. And that persists over a long period of time, despite our best efforts to try and find ways to enjoy it, what that can mean. Will you talk a little bit about that? Because I really liked hearing what you had to say about that.
Yes, it's sort of in relation to your experience with it. Is that
True,
jumping too far ahead? Well, maybe this will be your intro.
It could be a good segue.
Yeah.
Was there anything else on your...
No, I think I so highly encourage it because I'm not the type who thought it would be really fun to learn about myself and take some tests. I mean, that's what? But man, they changed my life. I mean, they've changed so much for me personally, understanding myself and having confidence in who I am and how I'm made and where I'm not, you know, I don't have a strength. It helps me kind of understand why. Why is that hard for me? Well, because that's not one of my strong abilities, you know, and professionally it's given me great confidence to keep moving forward in what I'm doing. And so I just can't recommend it enough.
A quick and dirty way, short of taking these assessments, to begin understanding the kind of human you are and to understand your personality and your natural abilities is simply to begin paying really close attention to your energy. When it's going up, what are you doing? When it's going down, what are you doing? And to the best of your ability, try to find ways to do more of the things that take your energy up and keep doing that and see where it leads you. Because when your energy is going up in the midst of an activity at work or in your personal life, that means typically that you're getting your personality style and your natural abilities in the mix, because we don't typically get high energy from things that don't match our personality or that we don't have much ability in. And so short of taking these assessments, that's one way right now to begin understanding the kind of human you are. And I would encourage, don't leave it just to that. As Charis was saying, take advantage of some of these tools that can turbocharge and accelerate your learning about the kind of human that you are, so that you can deploy yourself in the world even more enjoyably and meaningfully and productively, passionately. It really makes a difference. I got sidetracked there because I started thinking about that video I posted yesterday on Instagram. I'm posting Instagram videos, everybody. It's a new thing for me. So if you see them and you like them, tell me. If you see them and you don't like them, you can tell me that too. But just the idea that many of us adults are operating ourselves in the world thinking that we're one kind of human, when in fact we're a very different human.
Or not understanding that there are different types.
Right.
When you don't think about it, then you're never going to think about why do I dislike this job? Or why does this job totally wear me out? Or why is being in this environment so challenging for me? If you don't think through it, you just aren't aware. There are so many different types. Well, all of us are unique, obviously, but there are even just some general categories that help you understand, oh, that's why. Okay. Not a problem with me. It's just definitely not a fit for my abilities and personality.
And some of you listening may be in work situations right now that you realize are not a very good fit and have not been a good fit for as long as you've been in it, despite your best efforts to improve the situation. And if that is you, then you're a perfect candidate to use an instrument like this to great benefit. Even if that's not you, there's still plenty of benefit to be had from using tools like this. So you've got one life to live, as far as we know, and it would be a shame to spend any more time in a workplace, in a job, in a function that isn't really cut out for you, or isn't as well cut out for you as other things could be. And it's not as if this is only about your contentment in the workplace, because if you are in a job role that you don't enjoy and doesn't fit you very well, then you come home bearing the marks of that to your significant other, to your kids, to your neighbors. You're not as fully yourself or as fully available and engaged and energetic as you could be. So this isn't just about you. It is about everyone around you, your dependents, the people who love you, the people that you're responsible for taking care of. That's the same thing as dependents. So it really matters that we are doing what we can to be as well positioned in the world to fulfill the functions for which we're uniquely made. And the good news is that so much of that is discoverable. Who we were made to be and what we were made to do is discoverable. If you're willing to put in a little bit of time and energy to generate insight and then put action to those insights, you can experience transformation. Let's transition over into my story, because what we're talking about just a moment ago is a good transition. My first major chapter professionally as an adult was 14 years in a large nonprofit. And I started a communications team there and led it for 14 years, developed it to become, it was a mix of full-time, part-time staff, volunteers, contractors. And we had a pretty wide range of responsibilities, from AV responsibilities for a large sort of theatrical venue to communication within the membership, communication externally, all the tech within the facility, the networking, all those kinds of things. And so the team had a wide range of responsibilities and specialists within it. And I was the leader of that team. And the story is more complex than just, whether or not my abilities fit because of where I was in life and my personality and all kinds of things. But for the purposes of this conversation, for all intents and purposes, didn't enjoy much of that job ever. There were bits and pieces that I did, and most notably, the one-on-one interactions of sort of a coaching variety. And I came to realize that later, and that's part of why I'm doing the work that I'm doing now. But the conclusions that I drew from my, quote, failure to enjoy my work were very personal in nature. Like, gosh, I must just not be able to cut it, or I must not be trying hard enough, or they were judgments of myself, critiques of myself. When I began to get, is there anything you want to add to that?
I saw you in a job where there were plenty of things that you were very good at. I mean, you're really great at communicating, written and verbal, and there was a lot of that. You do have great ability in leading individuals. But there were so many aspects of the job that just didn't fit how you enjoyed going about your day, going about your projects, getting to an end product. What we talked about earlier was it was sort of like trying to put a square peg in a round hole, where after a while just realizing no matter how hard you tried and how much you worked at all of the different aspects of your job, it just never fit right. For you, that felt like failure for good reason, because you weren't fully satisfied with how things went. It didn't mean that productions didn't go off just fine and communication was sent out just fine and your team was a very healthy team on staff, but you were pretty constantly stressed and drained by it. Very rarely were you energized by it. when you'd have certain projects that you would work on, you'd see that bring energy out in you. And when you're meeting with other directional leaders in like a mastermind format almost, like those were the days that you would come home and tell me all about how that had gone. And just seeing you try so hard to do something that just never felt satisfying. And it wasn't because you were falling short in the sense that you weren't putting in some effort and trying to do a good job. All of that was there. And you're very intelligent and you're very capable. And
I was going to say, what just struck me is that in that professional chapter, I felt sort of dumb or inadequate. Like in your earlier childhood school age years, you had felt sort of dumb or inadequate because that environment wasn't playing to your strengths.
Right.
I had never considered it that way. But that is ultimately how I ended up feeling. And the funny thing was, I did do a decent job. It wasn't as if, and we did have a healthy team, but the amount of effort required to produce a decent result was just Herculean almost.
Where to someone else, it may not have been a huge amount of effort.
Every day I was adapting significantly away from my natural personality style and my natural abilities.
Correct.
I was operating differently than my design in significant ways very often.
Yep.
That led to fatigue, irritability, to just a sense of inadequacy. And I bet some of you out there can relate to feeling that way right now in your job. And of course, our jobs are, it's a complex environment. So it's not always just about our abilities and our personality, but very often when there's persistent dissatisfaction and irritability and fatigue and a sense of inadequacy, there's something more going on there than just, one or two of your teammates aren't very likable. So it's worth taking a deeper look at. And I think you've described that all really well. Kind of your experience. That helps me actually to think about it as I hear about it from you.
And like you said, that meant you came home not totally available because you were spent by the time you got home. You'd been with people all day long, which is not great for an introvert. And you were putting so much effort into the job in a way that did not result in satisfaction or fulfillment. So then you came home to me and two little boys, which require a lot of attention and energy. And you just didn't have that, which then snowball effect. Then you felt guilty or, bad that you weren't fully available at home too. But it was like, well, what do you do? How do you fix that when...
Where do you get to feel like a success?
Right, exactly.
Some of the specific areas that I've gained insight into with the benefit of hindsight that helped me understand why that environment wasn't very well suited to me are like my classification score is very different than Charis's. I'm low in classification, which means having to make a lot of decisions, solve a lot of problems, have a fast-paced environment to me is really fatiguing. And that was my environment. And the communications function leading that team, it was all about solving a lot of problems and serving my team's needs and responding to the leadership's needs and getting things out quickly and managing, IT network crises. And so I always had this sense that I was never able to do the things that I wanted to do. And one of the things I really want always to do is to be able to give a lot of attention to ideas.
Because your idea productivity is like off the charts.
Idea productivity, but also my personality style and just who I am as a human gravitates toward the world of ideas and thinking through them and understanding and seek. And a communications team they deal in ideas, but largely they've got deliverables. They've got things they've got to produce on a regular basis. And I like producing things and creating things, but I just wanted time and space. And so fast forward to today, and many of those insights are what have led me to attempt to create the work rhythms and lifestyle that I've got now. So I set my own schedule. Much of my time is spent by myself, unless I'm with a client. I set my calendar so I know when I'm going to meet with clients, and I know how much time to leave for just me to be thinking about things or working on other projects. And I don't have deadlines unless I've agreed that that's a deadline that I want. My time is really my own. And I'll let you, what is the difference that you've observed?
I think it's a big combination. We may have talked about some in the past episode too, but I mean, like you said, time is your own. So you're not having to show up at the office at a certain time because your whole team is going to be there and expects to see you. And then you need to stay in the office for as long as they are there, because that's what you do when you lead a team. So you have your own flexibility to come and go as needed. And maybe, an hour of your quote work time is when you're walking, because movement is good for your brain and working through stuff.
Yeah, thinking for me is work.
Right, which that's hard to translate when you've got other people around you or just to find the time to do it. I think not having multiple people depending on you for certain things throughout the day is beneficial for you to no longer have that, because that's draining to you. Where for someone like me, I like having lots going on around me, and I do have multiple clients and whatever waiting for things from me, and that like energizes me to get it done and dominate and make it happen. And for you, it just like shut down.
Oh, I can't do anything. Irritates me. Yeah.
But you are really high in idea productivity, and I'm extremely low in that. So it's very easy for me to stay focused on something, but I don't come up with lots of new ideas for stuff either, where for you, you can sit and think broadly and big and all around, and which is very different. But now you have the ability to do that. Well, the whole coaching, leading mastermind groups, coming up with things like the owner's manual, materials, or those types of activities, work items are things that you're really good at, that you're more naturally good at, and you enjoy. Therefore, obviously work is always draining in some way just because it requires energy, but it's not like soul draining like things can be when you just really dislike what you're doing. So I see you find more fulfillment in the work that you're doing, which obviously just makes everything a little bit better. So being in a profession and doing the types of things you're doing now, you are much more available when you are with the family, and just us understanding ourselves so much more. We're then able to intersperse in their time when you need to be alone and when I need to be out with people, and we can work all of that stuff into it, which is just a great benefit rather than it's like the only way of surviving, because without those things, you're just done and dead by the end of the day, where obviously you always have times where it is exhausting, and I don't love every aspect of my job, and there's some problems that I don't want to deal with, but knowing that you're going to get through those temporary times and overall still be able to truly implement who you are and what you have to offer.
Well, remember when we would go on vacation back in the old days, vacation was like, if I can just get to vacation. And then we get to vacation and I would just be whooped.
You take like 3 days to decompress before you could even actually start vacationing.
And vacation was mostly about just recovery from work.
Right.
It's good to recover from work and reset from work, but then we also need to be able to recreate. And it was rare that I actually got to the recreate play portion of a vacation. So every vacation had this like tinge of desperation to it for me. Like, would I be able to recover enough to come back to work somewhat fresh? And that's really changed, because now I go on vacation. It's like, oh, great, vacation's coming up. And we go to vacation, we have a great time, and I come back and we pick up where we left off. And I mean, there's some of the hustle before you go to get things nailed down, and some of the reentry but it's not painful like it was before. Even
date nights.
Right.
Often we're pretty much hijacked by talking through.
Oh dear. That's sad.
Well,
yeah.
And
no,
it's
right.
what was happening.
I had so much that I felt like I needed to process all the time.
Yeah.
That most free moments, and again, shame on me for like doing that, but hopefully I've learned that I was gobbling up so much of the airtime and the air in the room with needing to recover.
Part of that too was, unfortunately, there wasn't the energy to find much else to talk about. When you're so consumed by especially negative energy, it's really hard to pull out of that, even for a 2-hour date night to have a different kind of conversation, or dinner with friends. It's hard to just pop into carefree conversation when you are just so bogged down by the stresses. And we've talked often about when we moved here, there was plenty of stress. There's still plenty of stress. It was not an easy move, and it's financially difficult to be here and all, but it's stress that we're choosing. We're going into that knowing that stress will be there, but we find on the other side it's very worth it, because we love living in Steamboat and we love doing what we're doing, and And so it's a different, where when you're in an environment where everything around you is just weighing you down and there's all this stress, external stress, that you can't do anything about that. You can't change the leadership that you're under or change the team you're working for. Or the one thing you can change is if you're in the wrong kind of job or just the wrong, and it doesn't even have to be vocationally, just a lot of things we do in life, we may discover that this is not adding to my life.
Something that I surely wouldn't want any of you to hear is that if you just gain insights about the kind of human you are that you currently lack, that then all you got to do is turn around and start acting upon those things and boom, overnight transformation. For some of you, there may be really rapid transformation. My experience has been different, that it has been an extremely challenging process to create a lifestyle and a profession that align much better with the kind of human that I am and the kind of life that I was made to lead, the kinds of contributions I was made to make in this world. And same for you. I mean, we have been working our butts off since we got to Steamboat to figure these things out. And I'd say now we are relatively well established in these new lifestyles and patterns of work. And but it's a lot of work. But the thing is, I mean, as you've probably heard others say before, we get to choose our heart. I mean, you can continue in a job that isn't yours, and there's a certain kind of heart associated with that doesn't just impact you and drain you, but impacts those around you and those that you love. Or you can pursue a different kind of heart that requires, a lot of grit and, well, it requires a different kind of grit. Staying in a bad job requires a certain kind of grit. But, venturing out to do something different, to attempt to find the kind of person you were made to be in the life you were made to live is a different kind of hard. But as Charis was saying, it is a better quality of hard. The fruit that it produces in your life is generally good fruit as opposed to sour or rotten fruit. Even in the stress that you feel, it's the sort that produces character and catalyzes learning and growth if you're willing to stick with it. So I don't want anyone to think that this is an easy recipe to implement, that if you just get some insight and just do a few things, boom, overnight things change. Some things can change dramatically and quickly, but others, especially if you're in a profoundly stuck place, lacking a lot of understanding about the kind of human you are and the work you're made to do in the world, it'll take some time. But that's why people like me exist, is to work through that process with you, help accelerate that process with you, make it even more efficient and effective. And it'll be a huge privilege to be able to serve you. It's a process that I have gone through and am still going through myself. It's a journey, an ongoing journey. And I'm really grateful for these tools that they entered my life and that good people along the way helped me see how to use them. They've really benefited our marriage and our partnership and our individual professional lives. And I hope if you're out there listening and this is tugging at you, that you will give me a buzz, write me an email, shoot me a text, find me on social media, and let's talk about enlisting these resources for your benefit. See just how far you can go and just how much you can accomplish, just how much enjoyment you can get out of this world, even more than you currently are. So,
well, I wanted to say to you, like you're saying, it is a process, and it doesn't mean, like you said, once you figure yourself out, oh, you just get a new job and everything's great. I mean, you still got to pay the bills. You still got to do what you got to do. And for us, we got out here and you work construction, and I found odds and ends jobs that I could do while the boys were still at home, and slowly worked into that. It is a lot of work, and sometimes you still have to adult. You're an adult to, pay your bills, do what you need to do, but start exploring these different options and slowly learn about yourself so that you don't make rash decisions. You really can think through and process and make a plan for yourself, which is where you come in and are a great help for that, to really think through those kinds of things.
This podcast is all about using mortality to our advantage. So I want to make sure as we close this that I'm exhorting you to keep your mortality in mind, encouraging you to do so. When you're drawing your last breath, and that might be 30 years from now, it could be a week from now, it could be tomorrow. How do you want to look back on your life? Do you want to look back on your life and realize that you stayed stuck in that job because you didn't know what else to do, and you just sort of hung in there through your career until you were able to retire maybe and enjoy a few nice years of relaxation and recreation? Or if you find yourself really stuck today, do you want to look back and say, I summoned the courage and the humility and the truth telling and all of the big six to deepen my self-knowledge and to begin to create a life that matched the kind of human I am and the life that I'm made to lead and the work that I'm made to do. And man, I found a better way forward, and I began to enjoy myself in my life more, and I began to produce in the workplace in ways that I hadn't even realized I could, like Charis has in the real estate world. My family was happier. I was happier. I contributed to my community more because I was more available. I just want you to consider which of those two scenarios you would like to have, because you are going to die, but you are not dead yet. So I hope all of you out there will today make at least one decision to get after it, even just a little bit more than you already are. Wifey, thanks for being here again.
Of course, anytime.
I've said this often at the end of an episode, but it remains the million-dollar question. What's sticking with you from this episode? And here's the $2 million question. What's one thing you're willing and able to do today with the insight you've gained? Insight plus action equals transformation. Don't waste a perfectly good insight by neglecting to do something with it. Put it to work and transform your life. It would be a pleasure to help you become who you were made to be and live the life you were made to live. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Andrew Petty Coach, at andrewpettycoach.com, or email me at andrew@andrewpettycoach.com. Thank you once again for your time and attention. I'm so glad you tuned in today. Don't forget to follow this show and share it with your friends. And I'll see you next time on Andrew Petty is Dying.